What happens when a gorilla discovers his love for art and teams up with a clever dog and a little elephant to escape the circus? Let's find out. Inside a mall by the highway, an entertainer named Mac has set up a tent where he runs a small circus with his animals. The main attraction is Ivan, a silverback gorilla who acts angry during the show to impress the audience. After each performance, Julia, the daughter of George, one of the circus staff who feeds the animals and manages the lighting, comes to visit Ivan. Julia enjoys spending her afternoons next to the gorilla's cage, drawing pictures for him. One day, after finishing a drawing, Julia is visited by Mac, who compliments her art and gives her some money to buy new crayons. Later, when Julia leaves, George tells Mac that vacation season is coming, which should improve traffic. While Mac agrees, he secretly worries because the circus's earnings haven't even covered the rent. He starts thinking about how to attract more visitors. That night, Ivan talks with his friends, Estella the elephant, and a little street dog who has been living in his cage since he was a puppy. He blames himself for the circus not drawing enough crowds and decides he will show more ferocity in his next performance. The next day, Ivan tries to be as wild and scary as possible during the show, but the audience isn't impressed. After the performance, Julia comes to visit and gives him an old crayon set and some paper so he can draw. Curious, Ivan sniffs the crayons while the dog talks to him about it. Later, Mac feeds his baby, snickers, and goes downstairs where he finds the dog in his office. Frustrated that George hasn't removed the dog, he takes the key to the cage to shoo him away, but Ivan sits in the doorway, blocking him. That night, Ivan starts sketching his first artwork, Beetle, in its cage, using Julia's crayons. The following day, Ivan once again tries to scare the audience during his show, but it doesn't work. Afterward, Mac gets a call from another circus owner who's gone bankrupt, offering a new animal. Excited, Mac accepts, thinking this might revive interest in his circus. Meanwhile, Julia shows Ivan another drawing, this time of the street dog, whom she decides to name Bob. When Bob accidentally flips over a piece of paper, Julia sees Ivan's beetle drawing and is impressed. She calls her father, who dismisses it as doodles, but Julia recognizes the beetle, making Ivan very happy. Early the next morning, Mac prepares for the arrival of the new animal. Bob takes the opportunity to explore Mac's office, rolls on Snicker's bed, eats the dog's food, and tells the other animals that the day's show has been canceled because of the new arrival. When the truck with the new animal arrives, it refuses to leave on its own, so Mac enlists Estella's help to guide a baby elephant, Ruby, to Ivan. Mac introduces Ruby as the new star meant to revive the circus's popularity. Jealous at first, Ivan lies down to sleep, but Ruby keeps talking to him, asking for a stuffed toy. Ivan tries to end the conversation, but Ruby insists on hearing a story. He tells her about his scary performances, which eventually tires her out. The next day, Ivan again tries to scare the audience, but Mac interrupts the show to introduce Ruby. With Estella's help, Ruby performs for the first time, and the audience loves it. The circus gains popularity, and Mac even puts a picture of Ruby on top of Ivan's poster, leaving him feeling left out. After another performance, Julia congratulates Ruby and notices that Estella isn't putting her paw on the ground. Concerned, she tells her father, who informs Mac. Mac checks the elephant and finds no visible injury but suspects an infection and calls the vet. While waiting, Estella tells Ruby stories about her life in the wild, inspiring Ruby with the idea of one day living freely. The next day, Estella is still injured and cannot perform, leaving Ruby to go on stage alone. Nervous at first, Ruby eventually performs, cheered on by the audience. That night, Ivan notices Ruby is hungry and draws her a carrot on paper for her to enjoy. While holding the drawing, Ruby asks Ivan to tell a story about his childhood. He shares memories of living freely as a baby with Mac and his wife, performing for audiences, and how, as he grew older, he became more troublesome, leading to Mac keeping him in a cage. Ruby falls asleep next to Ivan's cage, comforted by his stories. Soon, Estella tells Ivan she won't live much longer and asks him to promise that Ruby will have a life in the wild, free from cages. Ivan agrees, and Estella leaves for Animal Paradise. The circus feels sad about her departure, and Mac begins training Ruby more strictly. Julia notices that Ruby is tired and asks Mac to stop, but he refuses. Ivan, seeing this, intervenes, grumbling at Mac to leave her alone. Mac ignores him until Ruby sprays water from her trunk in Mac's face, revealing his true identity as Heisenberg. Afterward, Ivan draws the key to Ruby's cage, hoping Julia will recognize it and release them so they can all go live freely in the forest. The next morning, Julia arrives early to greet all the animals. When she approaches Ivan's cage, he hands her a piece of paper with his drawing. Before she can recognize it, Mac shows up and asks to see the drawings. When he realizes that Ivan created them, he sees the potential to attract the public. Mac announces on TV that his gorilla can draw, which brings in larger crowds and makes Ivan the main attraction again. Despite the attention, Ivan doesn't seem happy and spends his time watching Ruby play. During the next performance, Ivan takes a piece of chalk but doesn't draw. Despite the presenter encouraging him, Ivan simply returns to his cage in the middle of the show, leaving the audience disappointed, including Mac. Afterward, Mac goes to Ivan's cage and notices that Bob, the little street dog, is still there. Angry, Mac calls Costello, threatening to fire him if he doesn't remove the dog. While Costello prepares a net, Bob talks to Ivan, who has a plan to get them all out. Following Ivan's instructions, Bob lures Costello into the gorilla's cage by biting him on the back. Ivan pretends to be asleep, but once Costello enters, Ivan jumps in front of him, causing the employee to faint. With the path clear, Ivan frees Ruby and the other animals. Using his immense strength, Ivan breaks down the exit door, and the animals leave the mall for the first time. Bob leads them toward the highway, guiding them to the forest. While the animals are escaping, Mac gets a call from Costello, who explains that the animals are missing, and he is stuck in the cage. Mac rushes to the mall in despair. The animals reach the highway and begin to cross, but Murphy, the rabbit's truck, gets stuck on the curb with a car approaching. Ivan runs back in time and saves Murphy, then they all continue toward the forest. Excited to taste freedom, the animals realize the forest is actually a small reserve in the middle of the city. As they consider their next move, Mac arrives at the mall. Ivan quickly hides everyone in the bushes and tries to scare him away, but Mac calms the gorilla and brings them back to the mall, leaving Ivan feeling like he has failed. Curious about life outside the circus, Ruby asks Ivan to tell her about his life before meeting Mac. At first, Ivan can't remember much, but with a little insistence, he shares his story. As a young gorilla, Ivan used to play with mud and rocks alongside his parents and sister. He spent his days with the rest of his gang until humans entered the forest to capture animals. Ivan's father put him on his back and ran through the jungle, finding a tall tree to hide him. His father tried to defend the family against the humans, but despite his strength, he couldn't overcome their firearms. After that day, Ivan never saw his family again and only had his gorilla plush toy to remember them. Ivan regrets not being able to protect his family, but Ruby consoles him, reminding him that his father loved him just the way he was. The next morning, while watching Ruby train with Mac, Julia visits Ivan with a gift, finger paints she received from her aunt. She asks if he wants to stay in the circus or be free. Julia explains that although she can't help him leave, she started drawing because she's free to be wherever she wants through her imagination. She tells Ivan that he is an artist and can do the same, which makes him thoughtful. Remembering how he used to play in the mud as a child, Ivan opens all the jars of paint and begins drawing on the wall of the stage where he usually performs. Meanwhile, a reporter tells Mac that people have spotted animals on the highway, including a gorilla. Worried about a scandal, Mac reassures her that all the animals are inside and invites her to film the show. He also asks George to keep Julia's involvement a secret. The show begins, and Mac introduces each animal. When it's Ivan's turn, he doesn't perform, but instead paints a landscape of his old home on a canvas. The crowd is amazed and applauds, thinking it's incredible art. Julia understands the meaning behind it. This is where Ivan truly wants to be. Julia runs to her father and explains that Ivan painted the landscape because he wants freedom, not just to entertain. George congratulates her for giving Ivan the paints, and Julia suggests helping him. She proposes talking to the reporter, and although it's his job to manage the circus, George allows her to go. Excited, Julia tells the journalist everything she knows. The story spreads quickly, and soon a large crowd gathers outside the mall, calling for the animals' freedom. Seeing the public's support, Ruby asks if humans are angry, and Ivan reassures her that people actually want to help them. Due to the growing pressure, Mac decides to end his circus performances and donate all his animals to the zoo. When biologists arrive to collect the animals, Ruby becomes nervous, wondering how to get along with other animals. Ivan comforts her with jokes and tips. Excited to meet others of her kind, Ruby tells the biologists about her life in the circus and walks toward them eagerly. Before leaving, Ivan says goodbye to Bob and gives him his stuffed gorilla as a souvenir. Bob tries to run away when Mac appears, but now Mac doesn't care and allows the dog to leave in peace. Ivan and Mac share a heartfelt moment alone. Mac shows Ivan a photo he took of him when he was a baby and recalls it as the best time of his life. Overcome with emotion, Ivan rests his head against Mac, making him cry. After saying goodbye, Mac leaves the door open for the biologists. With his mission complete, Ivan gets into the zoo's transport box and blacks out. Later, he wakes up in a white room, unfamiliar with the place and initially afraid. He tries to attack the door, but a biologist calms him and explains that this isn't his permanent home. The door is opened, giving Ivan access to nature. Excited, Ivan steps out, feels the grass under his feet for the first time in a long while, and sniffs the flowers. Soon, he meets other adult gorillas and babies. While observing them, He hears the sounds of elephants nearby, even runs to the top of a tree and sees Ruby playing at the water's edge with other elephants of her kind. Seeing her safe and happy, even feels that he has fulfilled his promise to Stella and completed his mission. Ruby walks away with her herd and even watches from a distance, content that both she and the other animals are finally free.